What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Lineup HQ for the NBA. Game one of the NBA Finals on Thursday. We're going to break down some players for you and give you our thoughts on the game and the series. And, just a little something extra for you to consume since there's not, if you're not into baseball, there's not a whole lot going on right now. There's some best ball drafts. They got Spike Week action going on. So I know I've been doing some best ball. I can't believe it's been May and I was doing best, but that's how boring it is, man. That's how boring it is right now. But these guys put this big prize pool out there. You got to take advantage of it. So,
right.
Got to ask you, Eric, how you feeling? How's it going over there in Spike Week, and what's going on generally?
Yeah, man, it's great. We're in the heart of NFL best ball season, which obviously, for Spike Week stuff is keeping me plenty busy. But for this, like I don't know how you feel about how these playoffs have gone. This is what I was hoping for, the finals matchup, the Celtics and the Warriors. I thought the Warriors were the best team in the West once they kind of got fully healthy, obviously getting Clay back and all of that, Draymond being healthy, etc. And the Celtics, I mean, ever since I don't even really know what happened in like January or something, if they had the rare the not so rare like team, closed doors meeting or whatever, and some kind of light bulb just went off for the Celtics, but they turned into, at least from like a analytically, the best team in the NBA. They were the best offense and the best defense in the NBA for multiple months. I thought wasn't a perfect road here for them. They had some games and they have some stretches of games that are just kind of dumbfounding. But I mean, to go through the Nets with KD and Kyrie, and then to go through Giannis, even though Middleton wasn't there, and then to go through Miami is an insane road. And now they get the Warriors, and so I'm really excited about this series. And I think from a fantasy perspective, it's also maybe like the best matchup for fun tournaments, because there's no Luka, there's no Giannis. They have superstars, but it's not quite to the same level. You get a Luka slate and it's like, okay, what is there to talk about? We play Luka and captain or don't. Like that's really about it. And I think these two teams are really interesting and a fun matchup.
Well, to hit on your point of what I would have liked to see. No, this isn't really what I would have liked to see.
Okay.
So I've been like, first of all, I thought Golden State was very overrated coming into the playoff, like overvalued. Everybody, it's old Golden State, old Golden State. I don't think so. I didn't think so. I think they caught a really nice road to the finals here. And but I mean, if I was going to say, I would have liked to seen Chris Paul get a ring. So I would have liked to have seen that. Obviously, that wasn't in the cards, and for a lot of different reasons. But otherwise, I would have loved. I mean, just it would have been the best TV in the world to see Golden State against Kevin Durant in this final. That would have been great. But we didn't get that. And that's okay. I mean, I thought, I'm with you though. There are times when Boston looks like the best team in the NBA and it's not even close. And there are times where I go, how do they lose that game? How inconsistent can you be? I don't know what to make of it. It's hard to put my finger on it. And as far as the Warriors, this really is, and people can, they can boo this if they want. This really is like, I don't want to say legacy defining stuff for Steph Curry and the boys, but like, let's be honest. The one title they won without Durant was against a Cleveland team that lost Kyrie, Kevin Love. I remember they were starting Della Vadova, was the second best player on the floor. that almost like, that's ugly. They never won another one without KD. They lost the 3-1 lead. KD comes. It's not even a competition in the NBA. Then they lose KD and they, because of injuries, they don't get back. But I thought they were overvalued a little because this isn't the same team. Curry's probably as good of a player as he was back then. Draymond's not.
Right.
Klay Thompson is not the dual threat he used to be. He might be a liability on defense now as opposed to back in the day when he was really good. So, but they got here. Now I don't know what to make of it. I got a maddeningly inconsistent team versus, a team I think is a little overvalued. I don't know how it's going to play out. That's our next question. And how do you think this thing plays out? Do you think it's Boston? You think it's Golden State? Short series, long series? How do you think it's going to go down?
Yeah, I do feel this. Like I'm a little higher, I think, than you, generally speaking, on the Warriors. But I do think the most fascinating part of like predicting the series is, at least just in like our little bubble or whatever, like I have titles futures on the Celtics from a long time ago. So I'm either selfishly rooting for them, or trying to figure out if I'm gonna hedge in the next 24 hours. But I think we went from, like, as a collective industry, being like super high on the Celtics, and like everybody I know was like kind of on the Celtics for several months now, and then they kind of have a few hiccups, right? Where like Jimmy Butler buries them twice. The Giannis series, where they honestly very easily could have lost that series even without Middleton. And it's like the Warriors run through, as you said, kind of a fairly easy path. I mean, like the Nuggets were just barely a playoff team. Shout out to Jokic, but that was a nothing series. And then, I really, really like the Grizzlies, but Ja got hurt, and I know that I know that they're good without Ja and all that, but you can't win in the playoffs against the Warriors without your one guy who can create offense. And then, I like the Mavs too, but they're an imperfect team. Luka has to just do so much. I'm not sure that the Celtics aren't just the better team here, but kind of because of the roads that they both had to travel and what seems like a lot more up and down nature from the Celtics. I think the market might be a little bit overvaluing the Warriors, and so I'm gonna stick with the Celtics, and I'm gonna go Celtics in 7. It's a long series for me for sure. I think the Celtics are the better team. They are just going to have the games or the stretches of games where Jaylen Brown can't dribble and Jason Tatum is throwing the ball all over the place, and so they're probably going to lose a couple games, and Steph Curry and the boys are just too good to get swept or something. But I think I'm still on the Celtics here, and I'm kind of surprised to see how confident kind of the market is in the Warriors.
Yeah, I've been on the Celtics each series for the last 2 rounds. They've made you work for it, for sure. Going 7 games each, but because when I looked at every series, I said, "Oh, that's an easy Celtics series victory. No Middleton. Oh, they're just going to wall off Giannis. Yep. That's easy." Man, it goes 7 games, and it's like, how do you drop these games at home that you're dropping? And then they get Miami, and I'm thinking, got to load up on the Celtics. How's Miami going to create offense? Like, this could be a quick series. Man, well, it's 7 games, man. And it's just like, how do you lose game 6 at home? You can't do that. So there's a piece of me that I look at Boston, and I think, you're right. Jaylen Brown's a walking turnover. Like, they're outside of Brown, Tatum, it's tough to, like, what are they doing on offense sometimes, if they can't get out and run and all this. But I look at the Warriors, and it's crazy. But I saw something on today. Without Durant, when they get to the finals, they're like 8-10. They're under 500. They haven't performed very well in the non-Durant games when he hasn't played in the finals. And like we said, some of that was against very speculative competition, and it's still not even that good. So maybe I don't know. I don't know what to think of it, but I know one thing. When Boston hits 3-pointers, they're unbeatable by anybody in the league, and they can beat anybody by 20-plus points, and they will when they hit those 3-pointers. They're a team that thrives off the 3-point line. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, if they get some 3-pointers in some of these games. I'm also curious to see what happens with Wiggins. Who's he going to guard? Is he going to stick him on Tatum? Is he going to give him a hard time? Is baby big dog, little Glenn Robinson, is he going to come back? Is he going to come back and give Jaylen Brown a tough time? Because if you got both those guys in there and they're both healthy defensively, Boston is strictly a Tatum and Brown kind of team. They get the open 3-pointers for the other guys.
Yep.
So I don't know how it's going to play. It's really tough, man. I'm going to bet Celtics, but I'll say this I have no idea how it's going to play out. They need to hit their 3-pointers to really bury you, and otherwise they could be in trouble. So with that being said, let's quickly go through some players and a couple lineups here, one on each side, and talk to me about game 1. We've had a team that has had a long time off now in between games, the Warriors, and then a Boston team that really probably needed to wrap that thing up in 6 just to get a little extra rest, a little extra game planning. but they didn't. They went 7. They still have ample time to rest. But man, by game 7, Robert Williams looked hobbled, and they were on their last breath there, man, against Miami when Butler pulled up for that 3-pointer. So like, I don't know. The numbers say that teams coming off of the game 7 versus teams that had extra rest really favors the team with extra rest, but Boston's had plenty of rest as far as 3 full days here. How's this going to go down here?
Yeah, I think it would have been so nice, given how banged up they are, mainly Time Lord and Marcus Smart. It would have been nice to get those extra couple days of rest. The one positive thing about the finals, specifically for the Celtics, is that it's a lot more spread out. There's a lot more days off in between games. So like there's even two days off in between these first 2 games, even though, there's no travel. And so I think those kinds of things, that's maybe a little bit more of a series long type of thing than just a game 1 DFS angle. But I think it's huge for Marcus Smart and Robert Williams have to be at least reasonably healthy, I think, for the Celtics to have a chance in this series. Time Lord specifically, I think, is super important, also super interesting for DFS. He is the type of a player that the Warriors just don't have guys to handle, right? And why were they able to dominate the Mavs and honestly everybody up until this point is their opponents really haven't had any rim protection, right? So it's one thing that the Warriors are running around the 3-point line like crazy, right? Shooting threes and all of that. But if they can also get to the hoop and there's nothing stopping, Steph, Draymond, setting guys up, even Wiggins from slashing, like they're already really hard to stop. It's even worse than if you have nobody at the rim. Obviously, Robert Williams is an elite rim protector. And then on offense, he provides like a vertical, like Draymond and Kevon Looney are not stopping a lob to Robert Williams. You know what I mean? Draymond's like 6'5", and Kevon Looney, jumps about as high as I do. And so he provides this element on both ends of the floor that I think is super important, which also makes him super interesting for DFS if he's healthy, right? If he's what we just saw the other night against Miami, he's useless and it's really bad for the Celtics. But if he gets a few days off and we can get, he was playing, I'm looking at the 26, 27 plus minutes before that at a reasonable price. I think he's really interesting for Showdown. The only other little things kind of to piggyback on what you said, I think they start Clay on Jalen. I think Wiggins is for sure going to guard Tatum, for about as many minutes as he can. And I think that just makes Jalen probably the guy. I think it'll be really interesting to kind of pivot off of what will be super, super popular Tatum onto Jaylen Brown, because it's going to be a lot of ISO ball like we've seen for most of the playoffs. And if they kind of load up on taking Tatum out, make him a little bit more of a facilitator, we've seen Jaylen Brown go score 40 in the playoffs here. And if he's the one that's got Clay on him, I know Gary Payton might be back, but if he's the one that's got Clay on him, I think he could go absolutely eat. And then the only other guy I wanted to kind of bring up from a matchup perspective, I think it's a Derek White series. I think I don't think they want Marcus Smart chasing Steph Curry around screens for 40 minutes a night, given his health. And I think Derek White is the guy that is really going to benefit from that. I think he's going to guard Steph a lot. I think he might guard Poole and Clay and stuff too. I think he's going to get a huge minutes boost because there's no, there's nobody to get bullied by, right? Like they wanted to hide him a little bit against Milwaukee and Miami because of the kind of the size, right? You don't want him on Giannis. You don't want him on Bam and Jimmy and stuff. There's nobody like that for the Warriors. And I think they need him against Steph, chasing Steph around screens. So he's kind of the other angle I'm taking on this series.
I like Jaylen Brown call. If indeed we do get Klay Thompson out there trying to guard, he has no chance with that quickness. Not anymore. It's unfortunate, but it happens. And then it leads us to another point. What happens if we do get Klay out there against Jaylen? It's not going well. Steve Kerr is one of the slower coaches to adjust in the playoffs. Like he's honestly, this is another one people could get on me for, but Hidoka's the better coach here. I think in-game adjustments, easily in-game adjustments and pre-game planning. Not impressed with Kerr. Impressed with Hidoka. And that kind of leads us to another point. You mentioned Robert Williams. Boy, is he such a matchup-driven guy. Like against Brooklyn, he was a detriment against Brooklyn. You didn't want him out there. You wanted Grant Williams out there, and you saw what happened. It was a sweep. When he's healthy, though, boy, you really wanted him out there against Bam. He was a game changer when healthy against Miami Heat. Absolute game changer. So it's matchup-driven. What it could do is Steve Curry's so slow to adjust to things that he might see Robert Williams out there and say, well, I got to start Looney, and I'm going to keep running Looney out there until they change. Well, guess what? You're doing yourself a disservice if you're going to play too much Kevon Looney. So we'll see how that plays out. But I do like the Robert Williams thing if he's healthy, which he's got plenty of rest. So I'm down with that. We're going to start Jaylen Brown in the captain because I like that. So one of these guys is going to go off. I think Tatum has the tougher matchup. We'll go with Jaylen Brown. If they got any chance, one of them has to have a good game. If they have any chance of winning, they can't have two bad performances out of those guys. What do you make of some of these other guys, specifically on the Golden State side? It's weird, but Curry defers sometimes. He doesn't, take everything upon himself. He defers sometimes. Clay can still hit open shots. I'm really impressed with Wiggins. Is a great defender, but he doesn't just stop there. He goes down on the offensive end, and he contributes quite a bit. So I've definitely been impressed with him in the playoffs. What do we make of the Golden State side here?
Wiggins is interesting because I do think they're really going to need him on offense. The only problem is he doesn't have Luka guarding him in this series. He's going to have there is not a matchup the Celtics can put out there other than and I don't think Udoka is going to put Tice out there in Game 7. He didn't play Peyton Pritchard in the second half. I mean, he might play Pritchard a little bit early in this series, but other than him for 8 minutes a game, there's no one you can just go at, right? Like you want to go at Jason, like Jaylen Brown's their worst defender, I guess. And he's a good defender, and so there's no one for Wiggins to kind of hunt, right? If the defense loads up to take away Steph and Clay from the 3-point line, Wiggins is going to have to score. So the opportunity I really like is going to be there. I would imagine it's probably Jaylen Brown on him. And so I do like potential opportunity for Wiggins, and he's going to have to play as many minutes as he can handle, basically as many minutes as Jason Tatum plays. I don't think that they want anybody like Iguodala. If he were to come back, I guess you could steal some minutes on Tatum with Iguodala, but they just don't have another guy to guard the alpha wing player, right? The Lukas and the Tatums and that. They just don't have anybody besides Wiggins, so he just has to play so much. I really like him. The other one is Draymond for me. I think this is a series, same thing. Looney can't play against these guys, not like he did in the last series, particularly if Boston goes small, which they have done a lot. They've closed a lot of games, with the super small lineup: Derek White, Marcus Smart, Tatum, Brown, and Al Horford at center. And he can't. Al Horford standing at the 3-point line is not going to be good for Kevon Looney being out there. And so I think it's going to be a lot of Draymond at center. And I think on the other end, with the way that the Celtics switch and stuff, they're going to try to run a lot through, Draymond running off ball screens, which they do that a lot anyway, as it is. But I think it's not a situation where, they can hunt Luka or they can run a bunch of pick and roll because I love Steph. If you run a Steph pick and roll and he switches from Marcus Smart to Jason Tatum, you're not gaining anything in that matchup. And so I think it's going to be even more kind of like the typical Warriors motion stuff, which all flows through Draymond.
Okay, I like that. And I'd be curious to see. I think the Kevon Looney thing, did Kerr fall in love with him last series so much that it's a detriment this series? Because I'm with you. I think they're better in this series without him, but we may still see him a lot. But I don't know. They got this. They called it the Death Lineup 2.0 with Jordan Poole in there. Or not so
pool
sure.
Party.
I'm
pool
sure.
Party.
I'm not so sure that's a great lineup either against the Celtics. To be honest with you, because now who's going to stop? Who's going to stop the Celtics? I mean, Clay's not good anymore, but Poole's a terrible defender. He's bad.
So bad.
So you're going to have a lot of problems. That's what makes me think this might be the Boston series. Golden State is great on offense, but boy, this defense is going to be a cakewalk for Boston compared to the last two series they had. Tough Milwaukee rim protection, then Miami just buckles down on you. Now you go to Golden State with a lot of weaknesses, but I don't know. We're going to see how it plays out. But we got three guys in there. I like the Derek White call. There's going to be a Celtics role player that absolutely probably ends up in the optimal. Could be Derek White. I like the reasoning behind it. Could be Grant Williams. Who knows?
Yep.
We've seen Grant Williams in these playoffs just be an absolute destroyer, man, when he gets hot from the three-point line. And so, but we'll go with Derek White here. We got one more spot on this team. You've mentioned a bunch of guys. We got plenty of money. If we think that Robert Williams is somewhat healthy after plenty of rest here, and he's going to get 25 plus minutes, I think Robert Williams is a really good play here. What do you think about putting Robert Williams in his lineup?
I love him. I love him for tournaments. There's just no way he can get owned enough for me to care. And he's the type of guy, right? I mean, I didn't even realize this actually until we started talking. I mean, there's a $1 million top prize for game one here of this series. And that's the kind of guy, right? That, I mean, he might get 8 points and play like 12 minutes, but you get the 28-point game, double with 4 blocks. He's an absolute must in Showdown. And, you can't ever get a good projection for him because his range of outcomes is so wide that's the kind of guy I want to target.
Yeah, I like that. Let's plug that one in there, and then we'll move on to Fanduel. But yeah, that's pretty good and pretty easy to make too. So we'll see how that plays out. But Fanduel a little bit different. You got the three tiers: MVP, Star, Pro. It's just you're not penalized for salary, so a lot of these guys can end up being chalky the same. That's how you got to kind of get different. But the MVP, where you're not salary penalized, like you kind of need the number one guy in that spot if you're going to win. Anything could happen, and you could take chances and hope Tatum, Curry, Brown don't do it or whatever. But it's tough, man. It's tough when they do. So MVP. Flat out the best scorer in this game. Who you think is going to be?
Yeah, I just think there's no way to go outside of Tatum, Brown, and Curry. So it has to be one of those three for me. I just don't see a way in which somebody else gets into that MVP spot a high enough percentage of time. Like even when Clay goes nuts scoring, he doesn't do anything else. And on FanDuel with steals and blocks being so important, I just don't see how he could ever be the highest scoring guy. I said that last time with Squirrel, and then I think he scored 1 million real life points. But, against the Celtics, I just don't see it. Maybe a sprinkling of Draymond because you do get the steals and block stuff. And we have seen the Celtics turn the ball over an elementary school team sometimes. And that could just be the Draymond triple-double with 5 steals or something. So maybe a sprinkling of him, but I still like Jaylen Brown here for all the reasons that we talked about before, and I think he'll be the lowest owned out of those big 3 guys.
Sounds good. Let's plug in Jaylen Brown. Then we move to the star spot, theoretically the second highest scoring guy in the game. I'm willing to take a stand tonight on I don't know a full fade, but fading Jason Tatum. I'm willing to take a stand. He has some inconsistent games for a superstar. He has more bad games in the playoffs for a superstar than I've seen in a while. So I'm willing to think that maybe Andrew Wiggins plays some good defense. He has a poor game. I'm fine with that. Curry, I question. This isn't he can defer sometimes, and this can be a tough matchup. Like what are the Celtics going to do with him? Maybe the Celtics shut him down, and some of these other guys get theirs, but they say Curry's not going to beat us. So I'm okay with that. So with that being said, you mentioned Draymond. I think the steals, the blocks, some assists tonight, if he's going to be running the show on offense a little bit, the rebounds are always going to be there. Like Draymond Green could definitely be the second highest scoring player in this game. And he's not going to check in these top 2 spots hardly at all in ownership. Kind of like Draymond in the star spot. What say you?
I love it. And then because Jaylen Brown in MVP is naturally a bet against Jason Tatum, right? And then you play Draymond and it's a bet on Steph being okay. You could still play Steph in this lineup and there's a little correlation between the two, but you're just betting on Steph scoring 40 fantasy points and Draymond just eking him out, right? And if Jalen's the guy on the Celtics, that inherently means Tatum is probably not the guy. So it's kind of like perfectly correlated.
All right. So for the pro spot, number 3 on the list, I think there's a lot of ways to go here. And this is a big one, but we talked about Wiggins. I think Wiggins could be a really, really nice scorer, and his minutes are going to be so often. But there's another guy we haven't really talked about much. Boy, he's been delivering fantasy-wise, real life-wise, in the playoffs. It's crazy. But Al Horford's been a monster, man. He's hunting that title. He wants it bad. And his fantasy games are like, they'll catch you off guard, man. They're really good sometimes. If we're against Tatum and we're on Brown and these other things are playing out, Al Horford might be a guy here for us, or Wiggins. I don't know. You tell me where we're going to go with this third spot, but we have some options.
I love Al Horford. I'm glad you brought him up because we hadn't had a chance to talk about him. But I mean, he's probably been the MVP of the team for this whole playoff run, I would say. Tatum is the guy, and Jalen is whenever Jalen can dribble, he usually has a decent game. But just this, doesn't take a ton of usage, allows the other guys to do their thing. So versatile on defense. I mean, he guards Giannis, he guards Bam when Robert Williams isn't out there. He can switch onto Jimmy Butler and do it. Durant, yeah, he at his age and to be able to do everything he can do.
By the way, I don't want to cut you off, but this guy was like a throwaway here just as early as last year. People were throwing like, we don't want this salary. He's terrible on defense. What happened? I don't know. Maybe you got in. What happened now? Or how is he so good on defense now when he was a total throwaway for the last few years?
He didn't play. He was banished to the Thunder because remember the Sixers traded for him, and it was the long running thing was, oh, well, you can't play Horford with Embiid, right? It didn't work because Al Horford was there. Well, I think the Sixers might just have a few issues. I'm not sure that it was Al Horford, and so then he goes to OKC and they're just tanking. So maybe it was the year off. That basically didn't play for an entire season, kind of like revitalized his career. But he's just been absolutely incredible. He also has huge steals and blocks upside. And we talked about the Celtics being careless. The Warriors can get really careless with the ball. They're running around. Draymond's slinging it all over the floor. Steph does it. Poole does it. So I really like Al Horford. I also think, like, kind of sneakily, a really good matchup for him. We talked about how the Warriors don't have anybody for Robert Williams, but the Warriors go small. Robert Williams might just come off the floor, and you're going to get Horford center minutes the whole rest of the game. And it's Draymond at center. I mean, I love Draymond. He's a great defender, but like, they're not going to be a good rebounding team if it's like Draymond and like Otto Porter as your big guys, something like that. Or if Porter and those guys can't play, it's like Moody, that kind of thing. So I think it's a sneaky good spot for Al Horford. He's obviously going to play a ton regardless, but the upside is a lot higher than people give him credit for. I mean, he's had multiple 50 fantasy point games this offseason or this postseason.
Yeah, for sure. He's been there. In fact, let's not forget, these guys aren't still playing in the playoffs if Al Horford doesn't come alive in the fourth quarter of that game 4 against Milwaukee. Like, they're back home. They go down 3-1. He delivered that game. He also delivered that elbow to Giannis. I'm not saying that was dirty, but that was kind of dirty. All right, 11 grand left for 2 spots. We could do a lot here, man. We could do whatever. Like, we haven't talked much about Jordan Poole. He could be a factor. This we haven't talked about Marcus Smart. Like, that guy can deliver fantasy again. We have so many options right here. Give me one more. We'll do one more player, and then we'll leave the last spot blank. I don't want to fill out a whole lineup.
Yeah, but, couple of things I do think are interesting. Well, first one is, like you said, we just made it through this whole show basically, and the defensive player of the year, who's a really good fantasy producer, just finally comes up, which I think goes to kind of show you that, I have my opinions on how things will play out, just like you do, but there's so many options. Guys are going to be underowned. Not everybody. Like, there's like 8 Celtics you can play, and like 6 or 7 Warriors that you can play, and that's not even counting like getting crazy off the board with Moses Moody or something like that. But not all those guys can be efficiently owned, and so we're showing on Fanduel, particularly Smart being pretty popular. But I do actually really like Marcus Smart. If he can be healthy, I think that they're almost like gonna kind of like try to let him beat them offensively, the Warriors, just like load up on Tatum, load up on Brown, and make them get rid of the ball, because they're also like iffy passers sometimes, particularly Jalen. And so if they can force the ball out of their hands and be like, look, if we're going to lose with basically just having to outshoot Marcus Smart and Grant Williams, right, and Derek White and that kind of thing. So I think Smart's set up similarly well if he can be healthy. And I like Grant Williams. I think Grant and Derek White are in the same similar bucket, that they might need them for defense, and the Warriors are going to be small. And Grant Williams, kind of same thing, can get in there and get some steals and blocks. Obviously, he's going to get some open threes, and he's so big, man. He could dominate on the glass if he really wants to and tries to rebound against this Warriors team. So I like him as well.
All right, I'll plug Marcus Smart in there. But so last question I have here is for this lineup and for DraftKings, it was similar. We've got 5 guys in there. Rotation guys going to get minutes, big upside, big minutes, and there's a lot more that we've talked about that we couldn't even get in here that are cheaper. That like you just talked about some guys. So my question is, unlike the Dallas showdowns where you almost had to have Luka at the high price tag, or your Milwaukee showdown with Boston where you had to have Giannis, you're just not going to survive. We're not struggling for the salary. So would you just X out those guys like you just, the Moody's and the Kumingas and the role player that you needed for the salary in the other showdowns, but boy, you kind of don't need it? Are you just seeing like no role for them here? And is it good to X them out, or would you at least keep them in your player pool for if you're running multi 10% or something like that?
Yeah, I think I might sprinkle. We obviously, as of now, don't have confirmed statuses on. I believe they said Otto Porter is trending towards playing, and I don't know about Gary Payton. I think, is he similar? Yeah, so they're both game time.
That's on me, man. I said Glenn Robinson. It's Gary Payton. They're the sons of the former man. That's on me. That's on me. My bad. I meant go back, and when you hear me talk about Glenn Robinson earlier, I meant Gary Payton.
I knew what you meant.
But some people out there looking at me crazy, I bet. That's all.
I mean, hey, the big dog's son did play in college.
I grew up with both the fathers, man.
Yeah,
I was a big dog fan back in the day. Boy, I at Purdue, man, big time.
Yeah. So I think, to answer your question, I want to see, because I do think both of those guys could play a pretty big role actually for the Warriors, because like we talked about the Looney thing. It's like if they do reduce Looney's minutes, maybe the game goes small. I agree with you on the Jordan Poole thing. Like, that makes the offense really good for the Warriors, but I don't know that they want to sacrifice their defense and having both Poole and Clay out there, and Clay's going to play. So I think that could mean like quite a few Otto Porter minutes or quite a few Gary Payton minutes. So I think those guys specifically I would probably keep in my pool, but generally speaking, I think there's probably better angles in this series to like doing what we talked about, like just fade Jason Tatum or just fade Steph Curry and play out the scenario. Okay, if Steph doesn't do it, okay, it's Draymond and Wiggins, right? We played Draymond and Wiggins. Those are the guys that are doing it for the Warriors, and Jaylen Brown's the guy for the Celtics. Maybe Brown and Smart or Horford, right? Doing that kind of thing. I think you have to think about how many times that lineup may be duped or something, but I think that angle is much stronger in this than like you said last series. It was like do Peyton Pritchard or whatever, Aaron Nesmith. Do I have to do that kind of thing? Because you just had to have the superstars before.
I'm with you. Kerr, before he got hurt, was very willing to play a lot of Gary Payton for defense. Yep. I look at the matchup and I say, this is the perfect time to deploy Gary Payton on defense. And if he was willing to do it against Ja Morant, he'd be willing to do it against Jaylen Brown. So if he comes back healthy, I think that's an interesting player. But I'm with you. Otherwise, I think we're wrapped up here, guys. That's game one. Should be fun. Erik, you got anything before we jump out of here?
No, I'm just going to be sitting for the next 24 hours figuring out if I'm going to – I have some pretty long shot futures on the Celtics to win the championship, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to let it ride or hedge for some guaranteed profits. But I, as of right now, I mean, what's the fun of gambling if we don't let it ride and go for the big score? I think I'm going to be rooting for the Celtics, and I'm actually cautiously optimistic about them for the series.
Yeah, unlike most years actually in the NBA, I have no idea who's going to win this thing. A lot of times you get to this point and it's a foregone conclusion. Like, we know who the better team is, and we don't. I go through so many scenarios in my head right now with this series. It's crazy, but it should be fun, guys. This program, Lineup HQ Showdown, will be back every single game of the finals for as long as it lasts. Somebody will be here doing it. If it's not me or Erik, it'll be Squirrel or somebody else will join. So tune into all those big prizes out there, like Erik said. Huge money. Good luck in those GPPs for Erik Beimfohr and Spike Week. I was your host, Headchopper. We'll be back next time, but for now, we're out of here.